Today's webinar is called Create Your Own Consulting Opportunity. So how to sell results rather than your resume. My name is Laura Wigglesworth, and I'm the Senior Talent Advisor at Callings, and I'm so happy that you're joining us. I'm equally happy to have Lou Adler with me today. He is the pioneer of performance-based hiring. Lou influenced me when I first started recruiting, I'm going to say a quarter century ago, with his trainings and his books on recruiting. And the main thing I learned from him is that you need to focus on results, accomplishments, outcomes, KPIs, whatever you want to call them. Lou calls it performance-based hiring. So to kick things off, I want Lou to introduce himself and describe the concept for me of what is this? What does performance-based hiring mean?
Well, you didn't tell me Laura is a woman who prepares, and she gave me a list of 37 questions. She didn't say that was going to be one of the questions. So
You
now
didn't
I've
want
got,
the questions in
so the question
advance.
is,
This is
so I would
you
say,
wanted the spontaneity.
okay, so
So
let me kind of go back and tell you who I am, but I'll give you a story. And stories are what really matters, even in consulting. I have a background in manufacturing and engineering. Was running a manufacturing company with 300 people when I was quite young, 32 years old. Hated corporate politics, but most important, I hated my boss. He was a group president. He came in every 2 weeks, and I kicked him out every other 2 weeks because we argued. But I quit because I didn't like those things. But my first search assignment was for another plant manager in the automotive industry. And this is whether you're a hiring manager, whether you're a recruiter, whether you're a candidate, I looked at that job description, and this was in the olden days, really the old, it was 1970, 1978,
wow,
and it
Lou, you're
was a
dating yourself.
handwritten
Go on.
job description, handwritten,
Hmm.
had to have 10 to 15 years experience in this specific industry, automotive aftermarket supplies, it wasn't after, whatever it was. Had to have heavy background in machining, labor, performance, and some other stuff. Had to be results oriented, had to be a go-getter and all this other stuff. And I looked at that job description. This is a 1978 first assignment. I looked at that and said, that is not a job description. Not an HR person. Didn't care about HR, quite frankly. I was a manufacturing guy. I looked at that job description and says, Mike, that is not a job description. That is a person description.
Mhm, mhm.
Let's put the person description in the parking lot. What does the person need to do to be successful? And he said, I got to turn around the plant. I said, fine, let's walk through the plant and we'll figure out what it needs. Spent an hour and a half walking through the plant, found seven things. It was a terrible plant. Almost any idiot could have turned it around with some common sense, but we figured it out. We had to do it. And he needed some background. Obviously, you didn't need, I don't know, they needed 10 or 15 years experience. They had enough experience to do that work. Uh, and we found someone in 4 to 5 weeks to turn that plant around. First placement. I've never asked a different question after thousands of different search projects and assignments and helping companies. I always say, define the work, not the person doing the work.
Excellent.
So let
It's
me just leave it there as a intro to who I am and what I do. And I think that specific
great.
story can be applied to every job seeker in the world.
That is a good setup, Lou. That is all we're going to talk about for the next hour is what needs to get done and why are you the person who can do it? How are you going to do it? But before we get into that, the how do you look for problems rather than jobs? I want to back up and talk about how the American workforce has changed or the work world. It's changed dramatically. It used to be, find a job posting, submit your resume, hope to be selected. And now more than 1 in 3 Americans earn money as a freelancer, a consultant, or a contractor. So that's roughly 64 million people. And together we, and I put myself in that bucket because I'm a consultant too, earn more than 1.5 trillion in the last year. So the companies have also changed. Instead of automatically posting another, job for an employee, a lot of them are now asking who can solve this problem for us. So that in a nutshell is what today's webinar is about. It's about learning to position yourself as someone who solves problems rather than just somebody who has qualifications. We're going to use this philosophy to identify and land opportunities for you, whether it's a consulting project that you want, or whether you want to open the door to a full-time job, or simply have more meaningful conversations with hiring managers. So I'm going to get started with theme one, which is how do you look for problems rather than jobs? Companies are increasingly buying this kind of expertise rather than another full-time employee. So Lou's been talking about performance instead of credentials for 30 years. So I'm hoping that we can pause at the beginning right now and just spend a minute talking about how people can stop thinking of themselves as an applicant and start thinking of themselves as somebody who solves problems. That's a question for you, Lewis. How do
Oh,
people
that was it. I
shift their
didn't hear the
identity?
question mark at the end of that.
Oh,
Okay.
no, just how do people shift their identity?
Oh,
Job
how
seeker
that
to
was, I didn't
problem
see that
solver.
Howard. Sorry. I got bad hearing at my age. So I think the issue is let's go at the point of a conversation if you're actually in an interview, and then back up to how to get that interview. But let's start at that interview stage. If you're in an interview and anybody asks you the question, tell me about yourself, or starts asking how many years experience do you have or this, call a timeout, maybe a yellow card because we're in the World Cup at this moment. Say, hey, I'm looking at the job description that you wrote. It's a little bit unclear of what you're really looking for. Let me just ask you this question. What are some of the challenges and problems a person in this role is going to have to solve? Because what I'd like to do is give you some examples of work that I've done that are most closely related. Then you give an example as a story. We'll get both of those parts. But that question alone, and I'm going to say you got to do it in the first 2 to 3 minutes once you feel that the interview is going off track. Because what that explains is number one, most candidates just repeat after what the hiring manager says, and hopefully they make a good impression. No, you're not going to make a good impression by parroting a hiring manager who probably isn't that great an interviewer and doesn't actually want to be there. So let's be
Yeah.
right. Interviewing is not fun for anybody. Not
Yeah.
fun for the candidate, not fun for the hiring manager, got other things to do, yada, yada, yada. But if you can change that narrative and do a pattern interrupt by saying, excuse me, would you just give me a little overview of the job on some of the problems a person's going to face or how performance is going to be measured? I'd like to give you some examples of work that I've done. Number one, you've just put yourself in the top half. You're now a different candidate. You're an unusual candidate. You're in the game. Will you score? That's a different issue. If you don't have an accomplishment related to that, well, you're probably not going to get the job. But if you do, you're going to be in the short list of 3 to 4 candidates. So a lot of things just happen there. Is you got to tell stories, you got to talk about problems, and this is what Laura wants to do today. Now, obviously, you have to get that interview too, but you can just use a version of what we said in the actual interview to get the interview. But let's leave it at what I've said right there.
Yeah, so that's a good example when somebody is applying for a job and ready to interview for the job. But to extrapolate from that, Lou, you can also apply that same thinking if you're networking at a conference. Is what Lou said was understand the challenges. So when you're networking with somebody, you can ask them, what's one thing that's driving you crazy? What challenges are you facing? And right there, when they say, well, the problem that I'm facing is the turnover, it's just nonstop. Everybody's out the door in 3 months. There's a problem that you can then turn into a consultancy if you have a way you can solve that. So I guess what I would say is maybe this moves me into theme two, which is read job descriptions like a consultant, right? Think about the problem that you can solve and how you would go about solving it.
I think
Go ahead.
you said that don't just drop that thing about networking. That was profound, Laura, what you said. And let's work on that theme rather than the posting. I mean, you said
Sure.
that the theme is what kind of challenges you're facing of having turnover. Let's just work on that because I think you've just created a situation and yeah, you glossed over it to a degree, but really, really important to think about that. And it's almost anytime you're talking with somebody, talking to a friend, talking to this, hey, what kind of problems your company's solving? What are they doing here? How are they going about that? All of those issues are, in my mind, critical. And I think that how do you do that in different kinds of situations, whether it's a job posting, whether it's a conference, whether you're to me, let me kind of just as soon as you said that, I was thinking, if I was in the construction industry, design engineer, architect, and I did that, I'm going to probably join a couple of societies and groups in my local area. And at the meeting, a leads meeting, which is the environmental building stuff meeting, I don't know what it stands for. I just know that I had a search assignment 20 years ago with it. Uh, I'm going to just ask the people, what kind of problems are you guys solving in design and construction? How are you handling that? Now, all of a sudden, people who ask those kinds of questions are drawn to it. Rather than you trying to tell somebody about yourself, it's you're asking questions that are important and people are going to be interested. And then you start doing it. To me, so I'm sorry for going off on that tangent,
No,
Laura, but
that's
I think you
okay. I
said
mean,
something
the
profound
main
that
point
needs
that
to be
we keep
highlighted.
bringing home is that the power is in your ability to solve the problem, not because you have a graduate degree or 25 years experience. So
I
can we
think the
move?
power is, let me just, I think the power is asking questions. I'm not, and that to me is the real power. Remember I said if you ask the question, you're already in the top half.
Mhm.
To be the finalist, you got to win the game. But asking the questions is the power. The answer is not unimportant, but sometimes you can hurry home and learn the answer. But asking the question and figure out what the problem is doing that root cause analysis, is peeling the onion and finding out what the problem is before you come up with a solution.
So if we're at a professional event, some sort of networking event or seminar, how do we even start? What do we ask when we're meeting people to try to uncover consulting opportunities?
I think it right there. If I was in a software development meeting or a GitHub meeting or any kind of meeting, I'd just start talking with people. And the reason I'm only picking that one with the leads because so here's a story. I was working with a company that was doing heavy design work for state-of-the-art buildings. That's what they were doing. Uh, and I realized there was a society of where all the people who do that work in Southern California. So I joined, literally, I was a recruiter. I joined that society and I met uh, the the group president of that society, interviewed him. He gave me three or four names, and then I introduced him to the president of the company, and they actually hired him. I mean, it was pure networking. But now, if I was in that industry as an associate engineer, an architect, a BIM designer, whatever it is, I'm just, hey, now here's one thing interesting. I'm just using this in Southern California. SpaceX is down here, a lot of space companies and orbital stuff. So if I want to get in that field, I'm going to join those societies. And I'm
Right.
going to say, hey, and so here's a silly example, but not stupid. I went into uh, AI and said, hey, if I was using I think it was Gemini. I just said, if I was using performance-based hiring, how could I build a performance-based job description for somebody head engineer of an orbital data center? And it said, well, nobody's ever done that before, but here's the job. I think, well, that's
Uh-huh.
pretty cool. So I just asked that. But now, if in a meeting, I would just kind of take that and say, hey, are you guys working on this stuff? How do you take power from the station? How do you beam it down to Earth when it's rotating around? I mean, you just ask questions of people, but you got to be, maybe you got to be curious and inquisitive to do it, but you got to change. So I think the theme is don't answer questions as you're an applicant,
Yeah.
ask questions as you're a consultant. And that's how you
To
kind of
uncover
just get in that
problems.
habit of
Yeah.
doing some research and ask questions. And hey, that's you're inquisitive, you're trying to get into this field. But my background was guidance and control systems. But if I was 23 or 24 and I want to work in, that's what I would be doing. There's no question. I tell you, I wouldn't be applying to a job posting, that's for sure. I'd be joining
Yeah.
these societies and I know this stuff. I do the thermodynamics and all this. It's pretty cool. And in some
There are
ways,
some, and when we get into showing the Callings demo, there's even you haven't seen this, Lou. There are some brand new features that will help you figure out what kinds of associations you might want to join, what kind of events you might want to go to, both online and in person in the area that you're interested in. So I'll show people those. Let's go back to how to learn from a job posting, though. So let's say you have a job posting that you've seen. You want to encourage people to read it differently to uncover consulting opportunities. How do people do that?
Okay, so I mean, if I had time, I'd do an example, but let's assume you have Gemini open. You find a job posting that looks kind of interesting. Upload the job posting to any AI system and use these words. Using performance-based hiring, convert this job posting into a performance-based job description. So I'll say that again. Using performance-based hiring, convert this job posting into a performance-based job description.
So
It's
we
just,
have Garrett
wait, let
is
me, I'm not
our,
finished. I'm not finished yet. So let me
go ahead.
just,
Okay.
uh, then what it's going to do is going to come down with it, then upload your resume and say, do you think I could do some of these jobs? And that's what I'd start with. Then it says, okay, now the next question would be is, how can I find someone in the company to get an introduction to talk about this? But let's just leave it at that. But I
No,
think if you at
that's
least
great.
start with that, you're in the game.
And I was going to ask Garrett to type though. Our CEO is on this call monitoring the chat, and I was going to ask him to type that in. It looks like he just did. So he put the prompt in chat using performance-based hiring, convert this job description into a performance-based job description.
Okay,
So
I'm going to actually
uh,
do this for something. Hold on. I'm going to, as you're talking, Laura,
I'm encouraging people to
of
take a
course,
job right now. I'd be curious to see. You can paste it in the chat. Take a job, go to a generative AI site, paste in the job, and identify the performance-based objectives. And then paste it in the chat. Tell us the name of the job and then what are the performance-based objectives.
I'm just going to put for a financial analyst and see what happens. But you go on. I'm just going to put, you don't need much, but that'd be pretty cool.
That's okay.
Uh,
I mean, our third theme that I'll go on to in a minute is about evidence rather than expertise, which is more building on the
wow.
don't sell your
I can't believe
qualifications.
it just happened. So let me just
But
say,
let's
here's all I said. And I'm sorry for doing this, but I just took what Garrett put in and said for financial, I just didn't even, I said for financial title, I didn't even say it. Build a reliable forecasting model, deliver actionable financial insights, strengthen discipline, improve financial processes. I mean, this is basically nothing. It came up with five or six things. So it, use AI for this because it will navigate a lot of things you don't know and really get you in the game pretty quickly. And I
so
think Callings AI will accelerate being in the game. So that's
Lou,
major league
do
stuff.
you want to share your screen and show what you came up with, or do you think it'd be too hard? Because it might be
And that's
more
easy for
compelling to
me if
actually
you
read
let
it.
it. If you want to do it, hold on. Share. Am I allowed to share? I am co-pilot.
And I pasted in an assignment for everyone to do and then share what you find out
Yep.
afterwards.
Hold on. Let me.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay. So all I did was I Garrett had a spelling error, so I had to change this. Using performance-based hiring, convert this job description into a performance-based job description. And I didn't, I said, I was going to say financial analyst, but I said for a financial title. Uh,
Wait. Okay.
then it said, here's a performance-based job description you asked for, written so it focuses on measurable outcomes, mission-critical objectives, and success criteria, not task lists. Interesting. I assume this is for financial, such as financial analyst, financial manager. I thought that was pretty interesting. It came up with some pictures, which I thought was pretty cool. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
now this was, how was it, seconds?
Yeah.
And I mean, it came up with some objectives: build a reliable model, deliver actionable financial insights. Then it said key deliverables, forecasting dashboards, monthly reporting packages, annual budget, ROI, process documentation. I mean, the good news, bad news. Uh, the good news from, you can hear me, right? It seems like I'm
Yeah.
losing.
Oh, yeah.
You
No,
can,
I can hear you
okay.
fine.
Uh, Sadly, because I've written so many articles about performance-based hiring and books, everybody, I mean, AI knows it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get paid for that. I'm trying to figure out a business model that works, but that I haven't quite figured that part
That's
out
your
yet.
contribution
Uh,
to the world.
yeah, right. I figured that's what it is. That's what I've got to claim that. But this gets you in the game. So, Laura, how would anybody can do this? You could upload your resume to this, and say, hey, what can I show in my resume to show that I'm qualified for that? So or be a consultant or even get the job. I think, but I guess I would make the big theme is if you want a consulting gig or a full-time job, you still got to do the same thing.
Yep.
Be a consultant. That consultant might lead to a 2 to 3 month project or a full-time job. But I think the bigger theme is think like a consultant when you're out interviewing, problem solving, demonstrating you're capable of doing it. Laura, why don't you take over there?
Yeah, Lou, I'm going to read Sarah's example in the chat, but first, Lou, I was hoping you could take this one step further. So all the competencies are there. That's not what we're focused on. We're focused on what do you need to have the person do. So if you scroll back up and it showed the performance-based objectives and the top challenges, the key deliverables, what would you do next? Let's say you have a call scheduled with the hiring manager. You managed to get that person's attention and you want to do possibly a consultancy for them, what would you do next with this kind of information?
So let's assume that you found a company and you found this job posting as a lead, and it was an industry you wanted to do. Let's just call it the space industry. Uh, I would try to find somebody. Let me just, and I don't want to do that. It's going to take too long for real time. My immediate sense, if I was actually trying to do this, I say that's kind of interesting. If I was truly a financial analyst, I don't know that that's totally true what's here. So I'd probably modify it a little bit based on my own knowledge and say, come up with stories that do it. Then I would go to this, I do some research about the 2 or 3 companies I wanted to find out. Do these companies really need that? How do they do it? Is there anything public about that I could get there? Uh, if it's a fast-growing startup, they probably do need budget discipline and improved financial processes and support. And say, how have I done that? I probably then say, okay, I'm not going to apply to the job, and I am under no circumstances. I'll say this 10 times. No circumstance, 3 or 4 go to HR and apply for the job. Don't do that. You've got to find either someone who can give you a referral, if you know somebody or can find somebody or know somebody who knows somebody, get a referral for that job to the employee, and that person will carry it to the hiring manager. Or if you could go to the VP level person or the director level and say, hey, I know you're trying to build, I think you're trying to do this kind of work in this area. Here's some stuff I've done. I think you'd be interested in a project I'm working on that does A, B, and C. It's something like that to try to get a lead to somebody. But the big one is you got to go through the back door. You can't apply to a job posting. They get
Yep.
1,000 postings, and if you don't have a perfect background, there's no chance you're going to get interviewed. I mean, maybe there's a
Yeah.
chance, but it's a 1% chance, and 3 other people are going to get, and then they're going to focus on if they like you or if you make a good presentation or went to the right school.
Yeah. We are going to show when I show the callings demos, I can show people how they can find out who the hiring manager is and who the people are connected to the job and actually network with them. And
So what did
so
Edward say that?
but back to my question, Lou, just if I can press you a little bit more. Let's say again, you've got a call schedule with this hiring manager. You're not going to apply for the job. You want to get in front of this person and get a consultancy because they need these problems solved right now, and they're probably not going to fill this job for 6 months, and the person's not going to get started. So, how do you prepare something to show them an example of your skills that does one of these 3 things, or do you ask them the general question, what are the biggest
Well, let's
problems
say
you're
this, is
facing?
it, now you've kind of made it a little confusing there. You've implied that you already have the meeting. If
Yeah,
you already have the meeting, then the meeting is a problem solving meeting. It's not a demonstration. Uh, and I remember, so I'm going to give you another story, but I think it's relevant. I don't know why I came up with it. I remember going to the doctor and a long, long time ago, because before I moved to where we live, a long time, 30, 40 years ago. And the doctor turned out to be a training, I mean, he taught at UC Irvine, or so a big health facility or college. Uh, and I told him I had a real pain in my ear. Uh, and my left ear. And he went over and he started looking at my right ear. I said, "What are you doing that for, doctor?" He said, "I want to see what normal looks like before I look at the problems." And it was, I mean, I still remembered this. I said, wow. He said, yeah, most doctors start diagnosing the situation, tell you what the cure is before they know what the problem is.
Yeah,
Figure out the problem first before you tell them what to do. So now I
yeah.
take Laura's question there. And hey, if you already have the meeting, your job is to find out what the problems are. And that engage, and that's why I say asking questions is going to get you the job.
Mhm.
It's certainly going to get you in the short list. If you can solve the problem, that's going to probably figure it out. But most people figure if you can solve it by finding how many years experience you have, and if you're a nice person and aggressive in the interview, that had nothing to do with problem solving. Problem
Yeah,
solving is figuring what the problem is. So if I have a
right.
meeting with Laura to do this work, Laura, what's the problem? What information do you have? What kind of data do you say that? Uh, how does that problem manifest itself in day-to-day operations? You said it was turnover. What about this? What about that? Do you taking Gallup Q12 surveys? I mean, you should know if you're a real good problem solver, demonstrate that you're a problem solver by asking questions. That's how you demonstrate you're a problem solver, figuring out the problem first. You
Right.
say, oh, Laura, now, wow, that's interesting. Let me give you an example of something I've done that's somewhat comparable to it, but not identical. And you give that story. But if you start telling everybody what your solution is, you're going to get blown out because you haven't solved their problem. It's just random luck if you had the right problem.
So you make a good point, Lou. I mean, I talk about results at the beginning and how you focus on results, but you've got to make sure that you understand the problem first before you can provide the solution. So that's a good
Yeah, I
point.
think that's the
Yeah.
theme right there. Say that again. That's worth repeating 3 times.
Sell your results, not your resume. Understand the problem before you provide solutions. Okay, so that leads me to the selling evidence, not your expertise. So they don't care how many years you've been doing this. Don't start out by saying I'm strategic, and instead you say you have to convince them that you're the one who can solve the problem. So instead of listing your skills, you say ask questions to make yourself credible. And then can you talk about how you gave me a couple examples on our last webinar about how a candidate that you were working with, then actually produced something that was useful to the organization. So it was almost like they created their own case study assignment that is becoming increasingly common. But it was almost like mini consulting to show their capability and also to do something useful. So can you talk about that? How to sort
Yeah,
of
so let me do 3 things because I don't want to. You made an important point there. Let's assume somebody says, "What's your greatest strength?" And you say you're strategic. Naturally, they're gonna, what does that mean? So in your mind, so here's what I would suggest everybody do before I even answer your question. Write down all your strengths. I am strategic. I am analytical. I am tenacious. I'm a team builder. Then write a paragraph that proves it.
Mhm.
It's the proof. Prove
Mhm.
that you're strategic. Don't just say it. Nobody's going to care if you're strategic or not. What does that mean? I told them I really wanted this job, or I'm really good at this. No, you have to prove it. You have to give that a person who's judging you enough information to prove what you're saying is true. So all your skills prove it. So now let me go to this one story and also raise the issue of I don't want to do consulting for free.
Mhm.
So let me kind of address both of those with this story and I'll come back to that. Uh, this had to be 15 or 20 years ago. Trying to think where I was in the meeting that gives me, but I remember talking to a MBA student who just graduated. He was in Italy, and he had went to some MBA school in Italy. I don't know, and he was Italian. Uh, but I remember talking to him, and he seemed very sharp and very capable. How he got in touch with me, I don't realize that, but we were on the phone. He called me, so I remember talking to him. Uh, and he said, I'm trying to get into the big European telecommunication companies, Ericsson, Siemens, there seemed to be 2 or 3 others, Italian, whatever they were. And I said, well, what's your real, and he's a marketing guy. So I said, what's your real strengths? And it was competitive analysis. So I said, well,
Mhm.
why don't you just do a competitive analysis, company A, B, C, D, uh, just a three matrix table, and put all uh, product pricing, whatever a marketing person does, 6 or 7 things, and put a little summary of each one of those, and put a little competitive matrix. Then send that. to the VP and tell the VP that as part of your final project in getting your MBA, you've been instructed to do a market analyst of telecommunications product growth over the next 3 to 5 years and just see what happens. Well, he did something and it wasn't in depth. He told me he did it. I talked to him a week later and he said, I've sent it off to 3 or 4 people. And then he told me an email or something. He says, I've got 2 interviews scheduled next week just by that alone. Uh,
Wow.
and I never heard him again. So I assume he got one of those jobs. That was the story. And it was pretty fascinating that he did it. The point is, though, and I hear this often, I don't want to do any consulting for free.
Hmm.
You're not doing consulting for free. You're proving that you're capable. Uh,
Hmm.
you don't give the whole answer away. And I'd say, even if they say, hey, we'd like you to work for us for a day, um, and show us what you're made of and do some work. Now, I think if I was the company, I would pay you for that. To me, it's not fair they don't pay you, but to me, that's immaterial. I just believe the company should pay you. But if I was a candidate, I know I'm good enough. I'm not going to give them the whole secrets. I do it for no cost. But that's a different issue. I'd probably raise a red flag if they don't pay me. Uh,
Yep.
but that's a different issue. Don't feel um, that you got to be paid for it. But irrespective, don't give everything away. Hold some of
Yep.
the good stuff back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like a sneak preview of what you're capable of. One of the
Yeah, you
things
got it.
that
Like a sneak
I
preview.
I do recruiting on the side for global health and development organizations, and one of the searches that I obtained recently was because I sent the hiring manager a sample job description. So I have a very different way of writing jobs. I write them in the Lou method of performance-based job descriptions, but I also have more inspiring beginnings to them because I focus on the marketing aspect of why would a good person want this job? And it's about the mission and the opportunity to do work. And so that's what I focus on in my job announcements. So I rewrote the job announcement using my method and sent it to her, and she called me the next day. So, it took me 2 hours, but I liked doing it, and it was a demonstration of my skills as well as something useful for the organization. So that's an example of,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
maybe call it mini consulting in order to obtain something bigger. I want to pause for some audience questions at this point and comments. So I'm just going to go through the chat, but Garrett, feel free to pipe in too if you've seen anything that Lou hasn't addressed. And Lou, feel free as you scroll through this to point out anything you might want to talk about more. Feel free to write your questions in the chat.
Yeah, I would encourage people to go ahead and ask questions if they have them.
So Aparna asked if we could provide a sneak preview of public posts. I'm not sure what that means.
A real job posting.
Oh, some
Okay.
examples of
I
job.
mean, I can definitely do it. Uh,
Sure.
I do this all the time. I mean, I don't. I just kind of put them in.
How do you
I
find new
cut
clients?
exactly the same statement, Gill and Claude that creates them. Now somebody's talking, so I'll stop.
No, I was going to say the question of how do you find new clients all depends on what your area of expertise is in, right? So a real estate agent finds new clients everywhere he goes. A education consultant maybe only finds new clients when he goes to a conference or something. So it depends on the area that you're working in. I find new clients I offer free seminars that are relevant on AI and recruiting. And so people come, and then I have a broader pool of people who know my area of expertise and can call upon me. So capabilities by posting on LinkedIn. Aparna, I think you might be referring to one of our new tools in Callings, which is called My Posts. And I'll show you how we use AI to start generating sample articles that you might want to post to frame yourself as an expert in a particular area. So I'll show that in a second when I go to the Callings demo. Lou, any other questions in this that you might want to address in the chat?
Well, actually, I'm not seeing a lot of questions
Okay.
other than, so let me just give the general approach. In fact, why don't people put some job titles in there? So just give us your job title. What kind of work are you looking for? That would be helpful. But let's assume you're looking for a manufacturing engineering role, or let's assume you're looking for a marketing role. Uh, I would then go, I mean, you go on LinkedIn or go on Job, Indeed or Zip Recruiter, just look for related jobs uh, for those things, but don't apply to the job. Use the job posting, as Laura said. Okay, what companies are in manufacturing? I want to get in manufacturing, the space industry. Okay, well, look up jobs, companies in space that are hiring a lot of people. Now, all of a sudden, uh, have we got somebody in operations? Is it logistics? Is it chief operating? I mean, as once you know the industry, just start using the job posting as lead generating. Then say, okay, which of these companies make sense? Then I mean, and go to AI. Say, hey, I mean, it's amazing what it does. You could say, review these 5 companies to see which ones are growing and look like they might have opportunities for someone to do logistics and supply chain analysis. Um, and it'll come up, it'll do the search for you. All these job postings are public. It can actually do some of the research for you.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm going to show people how they can do it just in Callings. They don't even have to leave the platform. It's all in there. Yeah.
So Edward had a question. He asked what recommendations about what practices do you suggest for eliciting uh, the volunteering of the problems from the standpoint of the company or the person you're interviewing with? How do you get them to articulate those?
Again, I would start off. Here's a softball question. If the company starts asking you to tell me about yourself, let's assume they say that. You then, as a candidate, say, Garrett, I'd be love to tell you about myself. Can you tell me about some of the problems you need solving with this hire? And I'll give you some examples of work that I've done that are related. That's like an opening to ask the question. The other one is a little bit more forced question is, hey, when the manager's asking or the interviewer's asking a lot of generic questions, how many years experience, what school did you go to, yada, 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 you say, before we go further, could you tell me a little bit about the job and some of the challenges the person in this role is going to face? I'd like to give you some examples of work that I've done that are most related. You've just now become a problem solver in the interviewer. And that to me is how you do it. Don't sit there and I'm going to say take abuse. If you're not being interviewed properly and where someone's digging into your background and finding out what you've accomplished, you're not going to be judged on what you've accomplished. You're going to be judged on stuff that doesn't predict your success. So you got to have the heart and the soul and the results orientation. Ask the question, push back. Don't waste your time. And don't be
Yeah.
proud. Let me just say this. If you're asked a hiring manager asks a bunch of superficial questions and you get rejected, don't feel bad because it had nothing to do with your ability. On the other hand, if a bunch of superficial questions and they like you, don't feel good because it had nothing to do with your ability. It was all personality and presentation. So if you really want to demonstrate that you're a strong person, start pushing back and asking the questions, and don't be shy about it. If you're a
Yep.
consultant and a problem solver, that's what good problem solvers do. In the job, that's what they do. And if you're in a job and you don't just take the direction and say, no, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to ask this question and this question. And let me kind of just make a general slight pat in my back is I was a radical in work. I thought most companies were doing stupid stuff. And I said, no, that's stupid. Let's do this and that. Okay, you do it. That was a different issue. I raised a question and they, but I got to do it. And I realized most stuff it doesn't take a lot of work to do. You just got to be hardcore enough to just say, hey, that doesn't make sense. I want to try a different way. Okay, do a different way and see if it works.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't work, you're going to get credit for trying it. And if it does work, you're going to get promoted.
Thank you, Lou. Your passion is contagious. In closing, I'm going to show people now how to use Callings and how to get a free account so they can try it out. But before I do that, my closing question to Lou is, have you ever been fired for the kinds of comments that you made throughout this webinar? Ever been fired,
So I'll
Lou?
tell you one story. No, I've quit. I've never been fired.
Okay.
I remember this is the real reason I quit when I was running a company 300 and I was already promised a division and some other stuff. Uh, and I was 31 or 32 and I had to make a presentation to the chairman of the company. Uh, and it was very inconvenient. I didn't want to do it. It was over Christmas holiday, and they forced me to fly back east and make this presentation. And that's what you did. This is the politics I didn't like. So about a month, and I was really aggravated. Really, I'm getting aggravated now. It's 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And then this is the chairman, the CEO of it calls me up about a month later, who I really like this guy. And he said, Lou, you haven't sent the chairman a thank you note. And what do you say? I'm not going to send a thank you note to the chairman. He said, no, that's the company. Every time you meet the chairman. And I said, damn it, the chairman should send me a thank you note for busting my ass. And even the CEO laughed. That's pretty good, but you got to still send him a thank you note. So it was that kind of stuff, this BS that just got in my way. So no, I quit 4 times that 1 year. Thanks for the question. Let's go off on Callings.ai.
Okay, thanks, Lou.
That approach in general. So, but when you're from the Bronx, that's the way you are.
Okay, I'm going to open up my Callings and use it to show you some features about how you can craft and get a consulting opportunity out of it. But while I'm doing that, Garrett, in the chat, if you can post the link that people can use to get a free account to sign up and try it out with the /Lou, that'd be great. There are 3 things I want to show you today. So my insights is the part of Callings that will help you learn about yourself. This is crucial. Don't start by entering your resume and downloading jobs. So before that, you have to know what is it that you want to do and what is it that you do well. And then from there, you need to know the market. What are the growing industries and companies that you could work for? And then from there, what is your dream job? So these things will help you in your quest to find consultancies. So I'm just going to show you quickly under my insights, you'll get a questionnaire. So you answer those questions. There's 28. I'm not going to show you the questions because yours are going to be different than mine. So mine were questions like, Laura, do you want to be filling jobs or do you want to be leading a team? Do you want to be outside influencing the way recruiting is done, or do you want to be inside making change? Those kinds of questions. Once I was done with that, it gave me a dream job description, and it even made up the name of a company. It was called Global Health Innovators. So that was kind of fun. And the key part of this is looking at the responsibilities and seeing, does this match what you want to be doing? So the focus, like Lou always says, the verbs. What is it that you want to be doing? Leading, incorporating AI and tech tools, employer branding, training. Those are the kinds of things that I want to do in my dream job. And then from there, there's this element called the market fit report. This is fairly new at Callings, but it identifies growing industries and sample companies that you might want to work for. So for me, it said HR technology and talent intelligence companies. And this sector, the word health here is about the sector that this is in, and it's expanding. And you can read about where does this data come from by clicking on the links that are embedded in it. And then it gives you sample companies you might want to consider. So you can add these right away. I've already added a few of them, saving them, and they'll go into your target company list right there.
Oh, cool.
It also gave me digital health and healthcare companies and why are they growing? And you can read the reports where the data came from for those who like all the details. So here are some companies that it gave me. So that's an example of you're shaping what you want to do to what the market opportunities are. What Lou talked about before, where he lives, he said the space industry is growing. So this is also informing, who are we going to be networking with? Who are we going to be talking to? What kinds of organizational events are we going to be going to? Anyway, those are a few things under my insights. So once you have a better idea of the growing industries, the kinds of companies you want to work for, your strengths, and what you want to be spending your time doing, then you can start the networking element. You notice that I skipped over jobs. I'll come back to that. But Callings, like a lot of AI platforms out there, finds jobs and helps you apply for them. I'm going to put less emphasis on that because that has not been working for a lot of people. And it's also not the focus of today. So today's focus is more on talking to people, asking questions, you're expanding your knowledge, and then getting a gig. So under networking, we've got these new tools. One is events. What kind of events in your industry and career events, both in person and online, are going on? that you might want to go to. And you can click on those and learn about them. So you don't have to go to an external site like Eventbrite to learn about these. You can also look at who are the recruiters who are specializing in my case, recruiting recruiters. And you can reach out to them. So it gives you a suggested email for your outreach. I'm not going to wait for that to load. I think it takes a minute sometimes. Oh, there it is. So here's a sample. You don't have to use this verbatim. You can tailor this. And then what kinds of associations, both for credibility, but also to find out about conferences, might you want to join? So here's one I didn't know about, Recruit DC. The American Society for Healthcare Human Resources Administrators. Boy, is the world becoming specialized. You can read about them. You can see how does one become a member. You can go to events and conferences. You can see their job board. Lots of information here about getting associated with the kind of people who can help you identify consulting opportunities, not to mention give you knowledge and credibility. And then there are two other new things that are more about your own morale and your own practice for your job search that I want to refer to. These are new as well. These have been out in Callings now for just a couple of weeks. One is community support. So in this case, you're asking for something specific like help with an interview prep. Hey, I don't really have a lot of practice answering the question, tell me about yourself. Can anybody help me practice that? And you post it here under requests for support. And after you post it, nobody gets your email address or finds out who you are until somebody says, I can help. And then they'll respond to you and you'll get matched. There's also coffee meetups, which is if you're looking for a partner and you're looking to get away from the screen and just stop applying and start talking to people, you can get matched with somebody who's also in Callings and talk one-on-one, once a week, once a month, every other week, however often you want, by clicking this and then signing up. Again, people don't get your email address until you're matched with each other and you both say that you want to work together. Okay? So that's the networking part. I do want to spend a couple minutes just talking about jobs because Callings has the biggest jobs database and all the jobs that you see are real jobs. So we don't post jobs, for instance, like Indeed does, where they may not really exist anymore because we're not one of those companies that gets paid by the number of clicks. So our jobs, not 90% of our jobs come directly from the career site of the company. So when you go on your job tracker, you go under find matching jobs, and it's going to start suggesting jobs for you, and you can save them or you can dismiss them. Click save and it goes directly to your job tracker. All right. Under the version 2, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but you might want to spend a couple of minutes. It's not working for me, but editing your preferences and saying in layperson's English, what is it that you really want? I want recruitment jobs in health organizations. This uses semantic searching, not keyword, so you can describe it in layperson's English. Otherwise, if you don't fill out your job match preferences, it's going to extract from your resume, and it tends to be really dense. And some people say, well, I'm not getting the right kind of jobs. So this is why. You can also go under filters and say, oh, I want hybrid jobs. I have a minimum salary in mind, or don't give me jobs where I'm not like an 85% score. You can adapt this as well. Okay, I know I'm going kind of fast, but we have about 10 minutes and I want to get to the promote yourself. So I'm just going to show really quickly, once you find matching jobs, how do you use Callings to apply for them? So let's go under one that I've already done here. Let's go under this technical recruiter for IQVIA. This is a company in North Carolina. You can evaluate the job here, spend a lot of time reading reports about it. What are people saying on Glassdoor about the company? You can go on that. Here you'll see in green places where I'm a strong match for the job, in yellow, medium, and in red, not so strong. And then you can use this AI tool to prepare your resume and cover letter. This is a draft. You should not download and apply with this, right? Sometimes AI gets it wrong and it's not your words, but you can use this as a starting point. So you click edit and you can go through here and accept or reject the changes right here. So you can accept them paragraph by paragraph or keep original. You can also go in here and change the word. You know, you want to get rid of health technologies and just keep vaccine development, for instance, and accept the changes. And then you save the custom resume. Same thing goes with your cover letter. Now, one of the key things that I want to show on this, and I'll also go into this when we go under your target companies, is the networking part. So I mentioned this before. These are the people who are connected to the job that you want to build a relationship with. And this can be the way to get your consulting opportunity. So in this case, it gave me a whole bunch of people, more people than I expected. So sometimes you got to be a little bit of a detective, and you know that somebody who's probably a specialist is not going to be the hiring manager. I'm not even sure that person's on here, but it's probably someone higher up like Grace. And so let's say I want to reach out to Grace.
Can I just interrupt a second?
Go for it.
I don't think the fact that it's not the hiring manager shouldn't matter. The fact is, so now you talk to this person, let's assume she's great. I assume it's Grace and she's a peer. Reach out to Grace. She's not getting bombarded by candidates, and say, hey, Grace, I know I see this kind of work you're doing. I'm doing some project work in this. Is this of interest? Grace might take your resume to the hiring manager and as an internal referral. To me, that's networking.
That's a good point. Yeah. Or if you want time with Grace, maybe Google her name and find out that you both went to a conference or something, I mean, something that you have in common.
Getting a peer
can be just as useful.
Someone who might be your subordinate, somebody lighter than that can, hey, I know that you guys are looking, is that in your department? You got to, networking is networking. It's not always going to the prime target. You go side door, back door, get somebody.
Yep. One piece of information that I want to give you here is that we give you Grace's email address. This is profound. Right? We tell people these days, don't bother writing people through LinkedIn. It's saturated and people aren't checking it. Nobody answers it. But we give you Grace's email address. Okay, so I want to go back to my job tracker. And I want to go under this job here at the Clinton Health Access Initiative. And under prepare, network, I want to look at people here who probably are connected to this job. So Jessica, definitely. And when I go under Jessica, what I wanted to show you all is that I did this while Lou was talking. I typed in right here into the message that I'm formulating for Jessica, what are the performance objectives of this job? And it came up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these. So you could, just using Callings, take a little time to read through these. And if there's one of them that you feel you could do right away, this could be your consulting opportunities. You can write directly to Jessica. Hey, I've done this before. Are you looking for someone to do this again? Or seems to me like you could use someone to do this. And you don't even have to tell her you're applying for the job, or you don't have to apply for the job. And we give you Jessica's email address right there. So you can use what we come up with, what the system comes up with here, the sample email address. But for consulting, if you want to take the time to extract some of the performance-based objectives and turn one of those into a consulting opportunity, that's a good way to do it. Okay, the last thing I wanted to show on Callings is how to promote yourself. So increasingly, to stand out from everybody else, we need to stop just applying through the applicant tracking system and start framing ourselves publicly, our persona, as somebody who can solve the problems that the company has. So 2 things that can help with that in Callings. One is my campaign. And so we create a visual representation of you, not just your resume, in something called the calling card. So you click Edit Calling Card, and you can decide how you want this to appear. It can appear as the back of a napkin. It can appear as a movie poster with you as the highlight figure. I created my own action figure. And this says, help Laura find her next talent acquisition role. and it describes me, comes up with 4 of the top selling points about me. And then you can start sending this to people right here through the system. So it's just a more creative way of framing you besides sending your resume. And then the last thing with the last 5 minutes that I want to show is something someone asked about in the chat, which is how do you start publicizing you as the person who can solve these kinds of problems? You can do it through something called My Posts. These can become Substack articles. They can be fodder for LinkedIn posts or other places in social media. But basically, the system will give you some themes for your chosen area. So mine is in recruiting. So it said, hey, how about some articles on career pivoting, recruitment marketing, interviewing, AI recruiting tools? Yours are going to be different than mine. And then you can create a post. You can decide, okay, I want to do it on career pivoting. And I want it to be a new post. And here, a few sentences leading, okay, well, here's a different one. So leading teams through ambiguity. You can start talking to the system and saying, here's what I want the article to be about. I want it to be short. And out will come a suggested article for you that you can then, again, I recommend people edit it. So don't take just what it comes up with and post it. Edit it and make sure it's in your voice. But this is a great way that you can start getting out there as a professional consultant that people would want to hire in your chosen area. So with that, those are some of the greatest features of Callings that relate to consulting. And we have about 4 more minutes. So I'm going to pause and see if there's some questions that people have.
Some people have had questions about the types of inventory that we have in our jobs, whether they're global or just US, whether or not they offer consulting or part-time roles. The answer is that those 14 million jobs are global. So you should be able to find roles regardless of where you are on the globe. And there are companies that post part-time and consulting-based or contract roles on the platform, though, of course, if you want to do that a lot, there's places like Upwork as well that where you can post yourself to offer gig work.
Yep. And I showed before how you can edit your preferences. So you can also request that the system starts sending you jobs that are part-time, jobs that are consulting. Abigail asked about costs. Do you want to address that, Garrett?
Sure. So Callings.ai is always free for finding, saving, and applying to jobs. The AI tools and premium capabilities are $29.99 a month. And then we offer steep discounts for 6-month and 1-year agreements. So 33 and 50% off respectively if you go with those contracts. And about 60% of our users buy the longer term agreements because the average job hunt is right now 6 months to a year.
Great. And answer Dimitri's question about where are our job postings. They are all over the world. And we have tested this in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we've had candidates in Benin, and we've had people applying to our jobs from Indonesia, and they find jobs too. So the system works for everybody everywhere.
So David asked, are we going to be sending out a video recording of this session? The answer is yes. Within the next couple days, we should have the video recording out. And is there a way to identify the contract length in the job postings? Those are going to be per job posting. Depends on how the company posts and articulates that. So you'll have to go through the job posts and find that. And as Laura showed you, there's ways to steer your search to find certain types of roles or certain types of sort of the status of the job.
If you find a job elsewhere off of Callings, you can also add it to your tracker if it's a consultancy, and that way use the system to help you tailor your resume and find people to network with.
Yeah,
So
we have a plugin for LinkedIn and Indeed, so you can add jobs to your tracker in Callings from there. You can also add jobs manually from hiring company sites. So we are agnostic. We want you to have your job search managed in one place, and it doesn't matter where the jobs come from.
I'm going to paste in my email address. We have 1 minute to go because on Friday, I'm going to have a tutorial for people who want a slower walkthrough where they're actually going through and using the tools. And we pause and then people share what their questions or what they've discovered about themselves. So that's on Friday. Can't remember if it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, but I'll put in my email address. And if you write to me, I'll send you the invitation. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you got something out of today.